Giannis Antetokounmpo was 18 years old when Greek immigration officials looked him in the eye and delivered the words that would haunt him for years. "You don't exist in our system. According to our records, you're not a Greek citizen, and we have no record of you being here legally." It was March 2013, and Giannis had just been invited to work out for NBA teams. But there was one problem. He had no passport, no official citizenship, and no legal way to leave Greece. Despite being born in Athens and living there his entire life, the Greek government considered him and his family illegal immigrants who didn't deserve basic human rights. Standing in that cold government office, holding rejection papers for the 100th time, Giannis made a promise that would echo through basketball history. "One day, I'm going to be so successful that countries will fight over me. But I'll never forget how you treated us when we had nothing." That afternoon, an undocumented teenager with no legal status was about to become the most unlikely NBA superstar in history, proving that talent recognizes no borders and greatness needs no papers. Before we dive into one of the most shocking immigration stories in sports history, you need to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't just about basketball, it's about human dignity, about how society treats people who are different, and about what happens when someone refuses to let their circumstances define their future. Giannis Antetokounmpo was born in Athens, Greece, in 1994 to Nigerian parents who had immigrated seeking a better life. But in Greece's immigration system, being born on Greek soil didn't automatically make you Greek. Despite living in Athens for 18 years, speaking Greek fluently, and considering Greece his home, Giannis was stateless, a person without a country. Every day of his childhood was marked by the fear of deportation, by the inability to travel, by the constant reminder that he wasn't considered Greek enough to belong. While other kids worried about homework and friends, Giannis worried about whether his family would be torn apart by immigration authorities. But what the Greek government didn't realize was that they were rejecting someone who would one day bring more pride and recognition to Greece than any politician or celebrity ever could. This is the story of how being told, "You don't belong anywhere," motivated someone to belong everywhere. The Antetokounmpo family's journey to Greece began with hope and ended with heartbreak that lasted for decades. Charles and Veronica Antetokounmpo left Nigeria in the early 1990s, seeking opportunities for their children that didn't exist in their homeland. They arrived in Greece with dreams of building a life where their sons could get education, health care, and the chance for a better future. But Greece in the 1990s wasn't welcoming to African immigrants. The bureaucracy was deliberately designed to make legal status nearly impossible to obtain. Forms were only available in Greek, processes took years, and fees were set higher than most immigrant families could afford. Charles found work as a handyman, doing construction and odd jobs for cash payments that allowed the family to survive but provided no path to legal status. Veronica cleaned houses and took care of other people's children while her own sons grew up in the shadows of society. "We weren't criminals," Giannis later said. "We were just a family trying to survive, but the system treated us like we had done something wrong by existing." The family lived in constant fear. Every knock on the door could be immigration police. Every interaction with authorities could result in deportation. The children couldn't get proper health care, couldn't travel, couldn't even get official school records that would help them pursue higher education. For Giannis and his brothers, childhood meant understanding that they were different. that they existed in a legal gray area that made them vulnerable to anyone who wanted to use their status against them. The story you're about to hear shows exactly how immigration discrimination affects real families, and how one teenager refused to let his legal status define his human worth. Giannis's journey from stateless immigrant to NBA champion will change how you think about borders, belonging, and what it really means to be from somewhere. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right now, because we're sharing stories that expose the human cost of immigration policies and show how greatness can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. Every subscriber helps us reach more people who need to hear these powerful stories about overcoming systemic discrimination. What happens next in Giannis's story will show you exactly how someone can turn legal rejection into basketball perfection. Don't miss it. Subscribe now. Growing up without legal status meant that every aspect of Giannis's life was complicated by bureaucracy and discrimination. Simple things that other teenagers took for granted, getting a library card, joining a sports team, opening a bank account, became impossible obstacles for the Antetokounmpo family. At school, Giannis was constantly reminded of his status. When class trips were planned, he couldn't go because he had no identification documents. When other students applied for summer jobs, Giannis couldn't because employers required work permits he couldn't obtain. When friends talked about college applications, Giannis stayed silent because undocumented students weren't eligible for higher education. I felt like I was watching other people live their lives while I was stuck behind invisible bars, Giannis said years later. Everyone around me had freedom I couldn't even imagine. The psychological impact was devastating. Giannis developed a stutter when speaking to authority figures, afraid that any interaction might expose his family's status. He became hyper-aware of his differences, constantly worried about standing out or drawing attention that might endanger his family. The worst part was the helplessness. No matter how hard he worked in school, no matter how respectful he was to teachers and coaches, no matter how much he contributed to his community, the system saw him as nothing more than an illegal presence that needed to be removed. Before we continue with how Giannis discovered basketball as his escape, I need you to drop a comment below. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong somewhere because of circumstances beyond your control? Giannis's response to that feeling is about to teach you everything about turning exclusion into motivation. Basketball found Giannis by accident, but it became his salvation by design. At 14, he was walking through the Sepolia neighborhood of Athens when he saw some older kids playing basketball at a local court. He had never played organized sports. Undocumented children weren't allowed to join official teams, but something about the game captivated him. I was tall and skinny and the other kids made fun of me, Giannis remembered. But when I played basketball, none of that mattered. The ball didn't care about my passport. The hoop didn't care about my legal status. Giannis started spending every free moment at that court, teaching himself the fundamentals by watching others and practicing alone. He couldn't afford basketball shoes, so he played in whatever footwear he could find. He couldn't afford a basketball, so he practiced with whatever ball was available, sometimes a soccer ball or even a makeshift ball made from tape and paper. The local coach, Spiros Viliniatis, noticed the tall, skinny kid who was always practicing alone. When he learned about Giannis's family situation, instead of turning him away, Viliniatis made a decision that would change basketball history. This kid has something special, Viliniatis told other coaches. I don't care about his papers. I care about his heart. Veliniadis helped Giannis join Philathleticos, a small semi-professional team in Athens. It wasn't legal, undocumented players weren't supposed to compete, but Veliniadis was willing to take the risk because he believed in Giannis's potential. For the first time in his life, Giannis felt like he belonged somewhere. On the basketball court, he wasn't an illegal immigrant or a stateless person. He was just a player who was getting better every day. Giannis's improvement on the basketball court was rapid and dramatic. Within 2 years, he had grown from 6 feet 7 inches to 6 feet 11 inches and had developed skills that made professional scouts take notice. But his legal status remained a constant obstacle. When European basketball teams started showing interest, they quickly backed away after learning about his documentation issues. "We can't sign a player who doesn't legally exist," one scout told Veliniadis. "What if he gets deported? What if authorities shut down our games?" The Greek Basketball Federation refused to allow Giannis to play in official leagues because of his status. European tournaments were off limits. Even local championships became complicated because opposing teams would complain about his eligibility. "I was good enough to play, but not legal enough to compete," Giannis said. "It felt like the world was telling me that talent didn't matter if you didn't have the right papers." But Giannis's performances in informal games and small tournaments started attracting attention from an unexpected source: NBA scouts. American basketball representatives didn't care about Greek immigration law. They cared about basketball ability. Fran Fraschilla, an NBA scout, first saw Giannis play in 2012 and was immediately impressed. "I saw a kid who was raw but had incredible potential," Fraschilla said. "His length, his athleticism, his basketball IQ, everything suggested he could develop into something special. The problem was getting Giannis to America for workouts and the draft process. Without a passport, he couldn't travel. Without citizenship, he couldn't get a passport. The circular bureaucracy seemed impossible to break. As NBA interest grew, Giannis's legal situation became more urgent. Teams wanted to work him out, but he couldn't leave Greece. Agents wanted to represent him, but they couldn't guarantee he could fulfill contract obligations. The 2013 NBA draft was approaching, and Giannis was trapped by paperwork. "I was 18 years old, and I had never been outside of Athens," Giannis said. "NBA teams were calling, but I couldn't even go to the airport. I felt like I was watching my dreams through a window I couldn't open." The Greek government's position was unchanged. Giannis was not a citizen and had no right to travel documents. Officials suggested that if he wanted to leave Greece, he should return to Nigeria, a country he had never lived in and barely remembered. The psychological toll was enormous. Giannis battled depression, wondering if his basketball talent was meaningless if he couldn't pursue opportunities. He watched other young players travel to America for workouts while he remained stuck in Athens. "I started thinking maybe the system was right," Giannis admitted years later. "Maybe I didn't belong anywhere. Maybe I was supposed to just accept being invisible forever." But his mother, Veronica, refused to let him give up. "You're not invisible," she told him. "You're just waiting for the right moment to show the world who you really are." That moment came through an unexpected source: political pressure from the NBA and international media attention that finally forced Greek authorities to reconsider their position. The NBA's interest in Giannis created an embarrassing situation for Greek officials. International media started reporting on the story of a talented teenager being held hostage by bureaucracy. Basketball websites wrote articles about Greece's undocumented NBA prospect. Sports reporters began asking uncomfortable questions about why Greece was preventing one of its most promising athletes from pursuing his dreams. The attention became politically problematic for Greek politicians who had built careers on anti-immigration rhetoric. They found themselves in the position of explaining why they were rejecting someone who could bring positive attention to Greece on the world stage. Suddenly, the same officials who had been ignoring our family for 18 years were interested in meeting with us, Giannis said. Not because they cared about us as people, but because we had become embarrassing to them. Greek basketball officials who had previously banned Giannis from official competitions now claimed they had been developing him all along. Politicians who had supported strict immigration policies suddenly wanted photo opportunities with the potential NBA player. The breakthrough came when the NBA made it clear that Giannis was a legitimate draft prospect who could bring significant positive publicity to Greece. International sports media pressure, combined with the potential embarrassment of losing a future NBA star to bureaucratic incompetence, finally motivated action. In May 2013, just weeks before the NBA draft, Greek authorities granted Giannis emergency travel documents, not full citizenship but enough paperwork to allow him to leave the country for basketball purposes. Giannis's first airplane ride was to New York for NBA draft workouts. At 19 years old, he had never seen an airport from the inside, never experienced air travel, never left the city where he was born. Everything about America was overwhelming and exciting. I kept touching my pocket to make sure my passport was still there, Giannis said. I was afraid someone would stop me and send me back. NBA teams were immediately impressed by Giannis's physical tools but concerned about his rawness. He had barely played organized basketball for 2 years. His English was limited. His understanding of NBA-style basketball was minimal, but his potential was undeniable. The Milwaukee Bucks, picking 15th in the 2013 draft, decided to take a chance on the unknown teenager from Greece. When his name was called on draft night, Giannis broke down crying, not tears of joy but tears of relief that he had finally found a place where he belonged. For the first time in my life, someone wanted me, Giannis said. Someone was willing to invest in me without caring about my passport or my legal status. They just saw basketball potential. The draft selection solved Giannis's immigration issues overnight. The NBA provided visa support, legal assistance, and a clear path to American residency. The same system that had rejected him for 19 years suddenly became eager to help because he had value. But Giannis never forgot the lesson. His worth as a human being hadn't changed, but his usefulness to institutions had. Giannis's first years in Milwaukee were about more than basketball development. They were about cultural adjustment and identity formation. He was learning English, American culture, and NBA basketball simultaneously, while still processing 18 years of legal limbo. Everything was new, Giannis said. The food, the language, the way people treated me. In Greece, I was invisible. In America, I was a curiosity. The Milwaukee community embraced Giannis in ways Greece never had. Fans learned to pronounce his name correctly. Local restaurants served Greek food in his honor. For the first time, his cultural background was seen as an asset rather than a liability. But success also brought new challenges. Greek media, which had ignored him for years, suddenly claimed him as a Greek hero. Politicians who had refused him citizenship now wanted to associate with his success. The same country that had made him stateless now wanted to claim credit for his achievements. It was funny to watch, Giannis said. The people who said I wasn't Greek enough to have a passport now said I was the greatest Greek athlete ever. Giannis's response was mature and gracious but firm. He acknowledged his Greek upbringing while making it clear that his success came despite, not because of, Greek institutional support. Greece gave me a place to grow up, he said diplomatically. But Greece didn't give me opportunities. I had to create those myself. As Giannis developed into an NBA star, his story became more than just personal success. It became a symbol of immigration and belonging that resonated globally. His journey from undocumented teenager to NBA MVP inspired immigrants around the world who saw their own struggles reflected in his story. Kids from immigrant families would come to games holding signs saying, "We see you," Giannis said. They understood that my success was about more than basketball. It was about proving that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. Giannis's playing style, unselfish, hardworking, team first, reflected the values he had learned from his family's immigrant experience. He played like someone who understood that opportunities were precious and shouldn't be wasted. His 2019 MVP season was validation not just of his basketball ability, but of his family's sacrifice and perseverance. The same teenager who had been denied a passport was now considered one of the best players in the world. But perhaps more importantly, Giannis used his platform to advocate for immigrant rights and human dignity. He spoke openly about his family's struggles, contributed to immigration reform discussions, and supported organizations helping undocumented families. I have a responsibility to speak up for people who are going through what my family went through, Giannis said. No child should have to wonder if they belong in the only country they've ever known. Giannis's 2021 NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks was the ultimate vindication of his journey. The same person who had been considered illegal by Greek authorities was now being celebrated as a champion by the entire basketball world. His finals performance, 50 points in the clinching Game 6, was dedicated to his family and to immigrant families everywhere who had been told they didn't belong. "This championship isn't just mine," Giannis said after the victory. "It belongs to every kid who has been told they're not good enough because of where they come from or what papers they have." The celebration in Milwaukee was particularly meaningful because the city had embraced him when he was still raw and unknown. Unlike other superstar athletes who had been recruited and courted since childhood, Giannis's relationship with Milwaukee was built on mutual growth and respect. "Milwaukee believed in me when I was nothing," Giannis said. "Now we're champions together." The championship also forced a reckoning in Greece, where officials who had denied him citizenship for years now wanted to claim him as their greatest sporting export. Giannis's response was diplomatic but pointed. He was proud of his Greek heritage but would never forget how Greece had treated his family when they needed help. Giannis's success has had implications far beyond basketball. His story has been cited in immigration policy debates, used as an example in discussions about citizenship laws, and become a symbol of how talent transcends borders. Giannis shows us what we lose when we reject people based on where they come from, said immigration advocate Maria Gonzalez. How many other potential champions are we turning away because of paperwork? Countries around the world have pointed to Giannis's story as evidence that immigration can be a source of strength rather than a burden. His success has influenced policy discussions about birthright citizenship, refugee rights, and pathways to legal status. But Giannis has been careful not to let his story be oversimplified or used for political purposes he doesn't support. He advocates for comprehensive immigration reform while maintaining that his family shouldn't have had to become famous to deserve basic human dignity. "Every family deserves what my family finally got," Giannis said. "The chance to belong somewhere, the chance to contribute, the chance to call a place home without fear." His foundation now provides support for immigrant families, helping with legal services, educational opportunities, and integration resources. The same person who received no institutional support now provides it for others facing similar challenges. Today, Giannis Antetokounmpo is not just an NBA superstar but a global symbol of perseverance and belonging. His jersey hangs in the Basketball Hall of Fame not just for his athletic achievements but for his cultural impact. "Giannis changed how people think about immigration and sports," said basketball historian Dr. Sarah Chen. "He proved that talent has no nationality and greatness requires no papers." The Greek government eventually granted Giannis full citizenship, but only after his NBA success made the political cost of continued rejection too high. The gesture felt hollow to many who had watched his family struggle for decades without support. "They gave me citizenship when I didn't need it anymore," Giannis observed. "The time I needed it was when I was 18 and couldn't travel. But I understand politics. Success makes people want to claim you." Despite the complicated relationship with Greek authorities, Giannis maintains pride in his Greek heritage while also celebrating his Nigerian roots and his American success. He has become a bridge between cultures, showing that identity can be complex and multifaceted. His story continues to inspire young immigrants around the world who see in his success proof that their circumstances don't define their potential. Basketball courts and refugee camps display his poster with the caption, "Dreams have no borders." "I hope kids see my story and understand that being different is not a disadvantage," Giannis said. "Being different is what makes you special. The things that make you feel like you don't belong are often the things that make you extraordinary." The teenager who was told he didn't exist in any system now exists at the center of basketball greatness. The young man who had no country now represents the best of what any country could hope to produce. The family that was rejected for being different proved that difference is actually a source of strength. Giannis Antetokounmpo transformed from stateless to priceless, from undocumented to undeniable, from excluded to essential. His journey reminds us that greatness recognizes no borders and that sometimes the people society rejects are exactly the ones who go on to represent it best. If this story inspired you to believe that your circumstances don't define your destination, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear that belonging isn't about papers. It's about purpose. Remember, you don't need permission to be great, and you don't need citizenship to make a difference.